Hello, everyone. In society, when somebody does something bad and is told that maybe they should stop, and then they say they're not going to stop because they don't see any reason to stop, they're arrested, hopefully, and once again, hopefully put to jail. Now, as we have discovered here in America, it depends on how white and wealthy you are. But, hopefully, if things work as they should work, that's what should happen. Well, what happens when an entire country does that? In the recent speech, Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov said that he sees no reason for Russia to change its goals in the so-called special military operation, also known as the unprovoked invasion of its neighbor, Ukraine. So what do we do with that? Because so far, even helping Ukraine defend itself has been, let's just say, spotty. And while some might argue that sanctions have been applied to Russia, as I've demonstrated many times through the course of the war, through the course of these reports, not just talking about Russia, but also talking about other heavily sanctioned nations, such as North Korea and Iran, that doesn't do a damn thing. Now, what can be done that actually has some impact and helps Ukraine at the same time? Well, the latest example is Switzerland. They just froze 7.7 billion Swiss francs in Russia's financial assets. Like so many villains, Russian villains were keeping their money in the Swiss banks, hoping that Switzerland would repeat the same mistake as it did in World War II when it declared neutrality, thus allowing high-ranking Nazi officials to stash away quite a lot of what they'd stolen from the other countries. It looks like Switzerland might have learned its lesson and is actively freezing the funds belonging to Russia. Now, what would be a really good next step, and I know that step has been discussed already, is taking all of the Russian money that has been frozen by various banks, various nations around the world, and just handing it over right to Ukraine. I think that would be very fair. Winter comes to Ukraine, and to those of you who might think, well, Ukraine is kind of in the south, how bad can it be? Actually, somebody grew up there pretty bad. So if you look at the map, there is a large, flat plain, one of the oldest geological plates that stretches from the deep north of Russia all the way to the Black Sea with not a lot of impediments. There is the Carpathian Mountains, but that's to the west. That's on the western border of Ukraine. And so basically what that means is the masses of very cold air can travel unimpeded from the north to the south. In Ukraine, what we usually have is very cold, windy December, very dry January, and then a big, windy, cold, wet snow dump in February. So much so that in Ukrainian language, the month of January is called the cutter because the cold cuts you like a knife. And the month of February is called the savage one. So that is what Ukrainian soldiers are having to deal with right now as the winter descends. There are additional articles on that very subject in different sources, including Euronews, Reuters, etc., etc. So everybody knows that this is bad. And while a lot of people are expressing, good wishes and prayers, etc., for the Ukrainian soldiers in the trenches. Again, we need more of a material support for this. If we want to get the soldiers out of the trenches, we need to finish this war. Hungary's Viktor Orban is once again playing footsie with Russia and is basically standing in the way of an expanded agreement between Ukraine and EU. So there is a condition that must be met for all of the members of the agreement to be present to pass any sort of decisions. And what Orban is saying is that Ukraine cannot be part of that group just yet. Instead, what he's saying, to pretend like he wants something to happen, is a 5 to 10 year extension during which interaction with Ukraine will be sort of broadened. But think about it. In 5 years, there may be no Ukraine if it is not receiving additional support from Europe. So basically, he is just doing his thing, being the stick in the mud, and delaying the ability for expanded collaboration between EU and Ukraine. Now, talking about what reasons should Russia have for reconsidering its war in Ukraine, or rather, why the rest of the world should reconsider it for them, because they're not going to. They've dug in their heels. They're not gonna admit that they're wrong, etc. They're just gonna keep killing people. So here's another reason, and this is why I'm wondering, like, where is, for example, UNESCO? Where are you guys? So this article talks about the destruction of Ukraine's historic sites. As I mentioned before, Ukraine is basically one great big historic site, including my home region of Zaporizhia. That is the land of Scythians and the birthplace of Zaporizhia Cossacks. And so there are so many historic buildings, tombs, they're called kurgans, the hills, the burial hills, etc. And all of that had suffered as the result of this war. So far, this is that we know of, there's been verified damage to hundreds of buildings and more than 150 churches. There is now a team of Ukrainian and American archaeologists trying to pull together information on the damage to archaeological sites, the digs that were going on, and the areas located underground, the catacombs, etc. And so, I mean, these are, remember, Russians claim to be bringing culture, prosperity, and peace. And this alone is enough to say that basically it's all bullshit. If that wasn't enough, wait, there is more. In the town of Sol-Iletsk, a little girl, 11-year-old girl, went to her neighbor to pick something up because her mom asked her to. The girl was gone a long time, and her mother became alarmed. It turned out, after the mother called the police, that this man had raped the girl and tried to frighten her into not telling anybody. He was one of the prisoners who was released to fight in the special military operations and granted full amnesty. This is your children, Russian people. You release this on yourself, and more importantly, you release this on your children. This is the consequences.